Today's episode is all about this one premise or this one principle that I actually heard about in church. So I was in church one day and it was like this fundraising event for the church itself. And the lead pastor got up on stage and he talked about how the church isn't made by one or a handful of millionaires or billionaires. It's made by the large majority of people, just average everyday people that are willing to, part ways with their money and make a small contribution to the church. And so a large group of people making a small contribution is going to have a much bigger impact than a small group of people with a lot of money to spend. And I took that and I reflected that upon my business. And it took me back to, 2021 when I'd first crossed over like the 20K a month mark. It seemed like this big behemoth that I couldn't overcome. Was just like this hurdle of I was like 15K a month and I didn't know how to get to the next stage and get to 20K and beyond. And I finally got it and I felt like I had made it. And it was because I'd landed this $6,000 a month contract with World Gym in Bunbury. I'm going to name them. I don't care. We're gonna get to why that might be an issue in a little bit. Anyway, I was at around 12, 13, 14,000 a month. And I finally landed this big contract with the gym. It was my biggest contract yet. And it finally crossed me over the 20K a month mark. I hired 2 new people. Things were great. And I had so much momentum in my stride. And I really felt like I was going to take my business to new heights. And so, I felt like a winner at that point. And can you guess what happened next? They got rid of me with no notice. So I called them up one morning just to clarify something about like some soaps or something silly. And I was on the phone with the manager and she just kind of goes like, we actually don't need you guys anymore. We're taking the cleaning in-house. Thanks. I was like, okay. So overnight I lost, over a quarter of my business, over a quarter of my revenue. And I was freaking out. I knew straight away that I was going to have to let 1 or 2 people go. And long story short, I ended up having to let one person go. I kept the other person on and just gave them some of my other jobs. And so I wasn't really working for a little bit there. And it was a tough kind of couple of months for me because it took me, I kind of just went back to where I was before and I was happy in that spot. But because I had achieved this high, I got this level of perceived success that I thought I had and then lost it. Like it took me down a bit of a spiral and it was really bad for me at the time and it really killed my momentum and a lot of motivation I had at the time. And it just, I don't know, when I heard that message in church, it just kind of clicked for me like your business is not built on one or a handful of big clients. It's built on lots of little ones because like me, if you get to a point where you've built a sizable business with a decent revenue, if you take a look at it and you've got like 2 or 3 clients that make up the majority of your revenue, that's a scary, scary thing because if they cancel or if something happens and their industry is affected, like let's say it's a commercial clean and their industry is affected, like with the mining bust a couple of years back, then you may lose half your revenue. And that's a very, very bad thing. I know a guy called Glenn Michaelides. He owned this company called Ultimate 4-Wheel Drive in Perth. Very, very successful company. And, they were doing like 8-figure revenues. That whole mining thing happened and the mining industry took a hit. And one of his biggest vendors or one of his biggest clients was one of the big mining companies. And they had to pull their contract because they just didn't have the resources and the need for that anymore. And so he lost like half his business overnight. And he talked a lot about, and he has a book as well where he talks about this, and he talks about how stressful that was. And he had to buy his business partner out, even though he had no money at the time, and even though business just took a massive nosedive. And so he also talks about how the number one in business is scary, that having one big client, having one form of marketing, having one whatever. So it just reinforces that principle so much more. And why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because it's a foundational principle. It's something that you should really kind of build your business around. Because if you only have one or a handful of big clients, it's hard to sleep at night. Like I've been there. I was even in that kind of position up until maybe a year ago where, we were doing a 7-figure revenue, but we had a couple of clients that were like a couple $100,000 a year. And I was like, what if we lost them? What if what if they just pulled the pin overnight and something happened and we lost like 20% of our revenue? And it was really scary and it stressed me out without me even realizing it. Like I was subconsciously just stewing on this all the time. And it's not until I grew bigger than the problem that stress and that anxiety actually went away, which is really what the goal is in business, or at least it is for me. It's to get bigger than my problem. So I had a problem of having a few clients that were making up a very large chunk of my revenue. And as you know, clients really don't have any loyalty to any particular service. Sometimes they do. We have a couple clients that love us, but we can't rely on that. We can't rely on someone's goodwill. And so if we lost them, it'd be a very big hit, and it would definitely ruffle my feathers a bit. So we had to grow bigger than that problem. And now we've grown to the point where if we lose a $100,000 contract, sure, it's not great. Sure, it's a negative, but we're not going to feel it as much as we would have a year ago, and it's not going to rock the boat as much as it would have then. And so am I saying that you shouldn't celebrate having a big win or getting a big client? No. You should definitely celebrate these wins, and there's something that you should strive for. You shouldn't just go about your day not wanting to make more money, but you should act like you don't even have them. You shouldn't start playing with house money and acting like you're now a $500,000 business when before you were a $300,000 business. You should still pretend like you're at that previous revenue level until you grow bigger than the problem that you're currently faced with, which is that you have a very large portion of your revenue tied up in one client. It also doesn't mean that you start to skimp out on this client, you give them poor service because you don't care about them. You still care about the client. The client comes first, but you should run with that mentality that you could lose this client and therefore you need to grow bigger than that problem or some other alternative. But in the meantime, I would act like I didn't even have these clients. Like I saw the revenue go up, but I was like, this isn't real until I grow bigger than this. And so it's great, like cool if this works out, everything's good, but I'm going to pretend like that revenue boost is not even there. And I'm not going to start spending more money. I'm not going to start doing more marketing and going or over leveraging myself, because if something does happen, then we've got a problem. And when you start to overextend yourself or over leverage yourself, if you grow from 12K to 20K a month overnight, you may start spending more money. Your payroll is going to go up. Your marketing expenditure may go up. Your supply costs may go up. And so you may get a cash flow shock. If you lose a big client, then all of a sudden you've already overextended yourself, and you may have even invested money up front into new equipment and other stuff. And now you've lost that source of revenue. And so you're now in the position you're making the same amount of money as before you had that client, but your expenditures have gone up. And so all of a sudden you've now got a cash flow shock. And a lot of these commercial clients take a long time to pay. So you may actually be in a position where you're now making less money, spending more money, and not even getting paid for the work that you've been doing for that client, because they're going to take like 90 days to pay. And in some cases, they may never pay you at all. You may get a massive client, and this has happened to people I know. They get a client which is like $1 million a year. I had a client, I had a friend actually who had a painting business, and he did a job which was $1 million over 3 months, a big painting job for some massive building project. And that building company went bust, and he didn't get that $1 million. He lost $1 million. He spent money on wages. He spent money on the vans, all the equipment, all the supplies, never got paid, lost a ton of money. And so these are things that can happen. I had a friend who he had to void like $20,000 in cleaning invoices because the company went bankrupt and they couldn't pay him anymore. And so there are all these problems that can come up, which is why you need to grow bigger than them. And you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket until you know that you own the basket, until you know that you're safe. So yeah, the illusion of making it with one big win is a bit of a fallacy, and it's a bit of a smokescreen in business, where like landing a big client can feel like you've arrived, when really it's just the start of the next chapter, and it's actually the start of a new problem that you have to solve. So it's very easy to build your business around them, but the danger is you start acting like an employee of that client and not the owner of your business, which is why I'm a big proponent for building a diversified client base. So growing slow, growing steady. I'm sure there's people out there that can go from 0 to $1 million in their first year, and then go from 1 to 2, and then 2 to 3, and then 3 to 5, 5 to 10. Great. I commend you. That's not how I want to build my business. I like to do it slowly and steadily. It means that I have a very good lifestyle. I have a very good balance of work life, and everyone's happy. All my people are happy. We have great clients that we take good care of, and that all comes because we build a diverse client base. We don't really go after the big whales yet. We're actually just about to start to, because we've got the resources that we can allocate to those big clients. And like I said, we've kind of grown to the point where we don't need to rely on them, and we also don't need to keep them. If we get a big client now, it's great. We'll be playing with house money. It's just gravy on top. It's the icing on the cake, but we're not going to be too fussed if we lose them. So we're kind of at that point now. But yeah, I think that building a diversified client base with lots of smaller clients is a much better business. Like, I would rather have a $500,000 business that's made up of 300 small clients than $1 million business that has 3 or 4 big commercial clients. To me, that is a very, very scary alternative. Even though the revenue and the profit may be much higher, would you be able to sleep at night knowing that you have 3 or 4 clients that make up your entire income and your entire business? I don't think you would. So I don't want to fearmonger you too much, and I don't want this episode to be really negative and make you think that making money is bad and big clients and these whales, as we like to call them, are bad. But it's just something that you should be vigilant of, and it's something that you should bear in mind as you grow your business, because it is something that comes to all of us. We do get that one big client that kind of changes everything for us. I can think of that was my first big client that kind of changed everything for me at that point. And then I also got another big client later down the track, which was the hospital client, which I still have today. That changed everything for me. And then there was another one that changed everything for me. So you are going to reach these different stages, and you just have to remember these principles, because the business is not built on one client or a handful of clients. It's built on a large, diversified range of people. And it's going to create a much more secure, much more scalable and saleable business when you have a diversified client base that is immune to culture shocks and economic crises and all these things, and like pandemics and industry downturns. You want to have a diversified client base that's comprised of lots of small clients. And then you can also have your bigger clients as well, which are great revenue boosters, great profit boosters, but you also want to grow bigger than them. You want to grow bigger than the problems that may arise from having a small number of these whales, as we like to call them. So that's kind of where we're at. We've grown bigger than that problem, and now we're ready to take it on. And we want to start to get bigger clients, because we're at the point now where, we have like 400 clients, 300 or 400 clients, and it's great. Like, our revenue's really good. Our profit's pretty good. But if we want to double our revenue, like we've done pretty much every year, it would be very, very hard for us to go from 350 clients to 700 clients. Like, that would be very hard. So now we're moving in the direction of going after more whales, more bigger clients, these commercial contracts. But it's because we're already playing with house money now. We have good profit margins. We have a good absolute profit, meaning the profit number we have now is high. Like, sure, it's great if you have a 25% profit, but if your revenue is only 100K, it's not great, is it? Whereas if you have 20% profit on $2 million in revenue, that's pretty good. Anyway, my point is, there's different stages of business. This is how I run my business. This is my paradigm and my view of how everything should be for myself. You can choose to accept that or reject it, but I thought I'd share this with you because it's something that caused a few sleepless nights for me earlier on in my business, and it's something that really shook the boat for me and caused me a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, because I didn't really wrap my head around that principle. I just thought, you get a couple big clients, you treat them well, everything's great, you make a lot of money, but things can happen, and your whole world can change overnight if you put all your eggs in one basket. So, build that diversified client base, scale slowly, scale steadily. Business is a game that rewards delayed gratification and perseverance. So don't try to grow too fast. I know a lot of young guys want to do that because they're like so hustle minded, and like, if you really want to, sure, but that's just not how I really want to do it. So yeah, 10 clients paying $1,000 each is much safer than one client paying $10,000. Simple as that. And small clients, they're going to create stability, predictability, and resilience about market changes and all the other stuff that could really shift things for you. So, but still, like, celebrate the big contracts, celebrate your big wins, but just keep that in mind. Bear that principle in mind and move forward on that premise that these clients could go at any moment. And so you don't want to overextend yourself and over leverage yourself, because you could find yourself in a spot of bother later on. And ask yourself this question: if I lost my biggest client tomorrow, could I survive? If the answer is no, you need to change something. And in addition to all that, you need to grow bigger than your problems, all your staff drama, like client cancellations, complaints and refunds. You need to grow bigger than all these problems, because when you're small, every issue feels massive. And as you grow, you develop capacity and systems and perspective that are going to allow you to overshadow these problems. And so business doesn't get easier. You just get stronger, and you just get bigger, and you just get more powerful than all of these distractions and these problems and these setbacks and constraints and hurdles. And things become easier through that kind of lens, through that kind of perspective. So yeah, in closing, the World Gym contract back then, it felt like the best thing ever at the time. And I was really like riding everything on that, and I invested more money into the business, and I really thought that this was like, we're going to really come out the gates running now, and this was going to be a big momentum boost and a big shift for us. And then it quickly became the worst thing ever. But it taught me one of the most valuable lessons. You don't build your house on one pillar, you build it on dozens, and the business will stand strong no matter what happens. So, little exercise you should try is just sit down and really figure out what percentage of your revenue comes from your top client or your top clients. And if it's a big number, if it's a scary number, like think about, if I lost that client, would I be scared? Would I be in trouble? Would I be stressed? Would I be losing money? If the answer is yes, then you need to work on growing and diversifying your customer base. And it's kind of like investing. You want to hedge your bets, and you want to diversify, because that lowers your exposure to risk. And in sports, I don't know why I went straight to sports. I guess, I'm a guy. We think in sports terms, everything is just like football and soccer and basketball to us. But one superstar, they can win you games, but if they get injured, or if they go to another team, the team can collapse. So you need to build depth within the team or within the business. And it's also going to bring you a lot more freedom and autonomy in the business, because a diversified customer base means you own your business. And it means you're not going to feel like you're working for your clients. Like it feels more like your clients are working for you when you have a diversified customer base, and you should always serve your clients. Like, that's where I don't want to get mixed up here. You should always work to serve your clients. But when you have a business like that, it feels like you're at your customer's beck and call, and you're on the back foot all the time, and you feel like a servant. Like you would never be able to say no to them, because if you lost them, it would be a big problem. Anyway, that's the notion for today. That's my little bit of wisdom, if I somehow have any left in my brain to share. That's my it's my little bit of advice for today. Just something to bear in mind, something that has really troubled me a little bit in the past, and I've only recently been able to overcome that problem and grow bigger than that problem. So yeah, just bear that in mind. Obviously, it is great to get big clients and grow fast, and you should celebrate those wins, but you should definitely adopt that perspective and that mindset in your business, because it's going to allow you to have longevity and sustainability. So with that being said, thanks for listening to another episode. I think this is episode 90, so very, very close to 100 now. I'm super excited for that. I'll try to do something special, and I'll talk to you next time.